Hello, this is Alexandra Levine live with the America's Pulse Network. We are all in tonight with Alexandra Levine. I just want to say happy Holy Week to everyone. As we say in Hebrew, Chag Sameach, happy Passover, and I wish everybody a very happy early Easter. I hope everybody has a great Easter Sunday this coming weekend, as well as next week. But unfortunately, some people have not had a happy Passover, including Governor Josh Shapiro and his wife and children. Let's pull up the first slide. Breaking news, an unknown arsonist set fire to the Pennsylvania governor's mansion early this morning. The fire caused significant damage. Governor Josh Shapiro and his family were alerted to the fire by state police and were safely evacuated from the mansion. Police confirm it was the work of an arsonist. This is domestic terrorism. The question is whether or not this was the work of anti-Semites. Governor Shapiro is Jewish, and this is Passover week. Thank God the governor, his wife, and their 4 children are okay. And I just want to say our hearts go out to the Shapiro family. Now, I will admit I do not agree with him on a lot of things. I said, yes, he's Jewish, but he doesn't really represent me. But at this time, we all come together, and the Trump administration came together as well and said, thank God that Governor Shapiro and his wife and kids were not burned alive during this episode. This happened Passover night. This happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. So everybody was sleeping. They could have been burned alive in their sleep. And my question is, was there not enough guards at the time to guard people from, or this arsonist from coming across the fence to the governor's mansion? Because he burned a significant part of the mansion. How did he get this far? Was he in camouflage? How did he have all this gasoline with him, with a match to light the governor's mansion up? Why wasn't there proper cameras to really pinpoint this guy to make sure this didn't happen? That's a lot of questions that myself is asking, and people all over Pennsylvania and around the country and the world. How did this arsonist get so close to the governor's mansion? And let me tell you, if somebody can do that to one governor's mansion, they can easily do it to another governor's mansion. I do heavily believe that this was a terrorist attack. I do heavily believe that it had to do with anti-Semitism because, as I reported, Governor Shapiro is Jewish. He does celebrate Passover with his family, and he was with his family and his mansion after they had Passover Seder. It's very, very scary that this is happening. But again, it's because we have a lot of illegal criminals that are still in this country. We have a lot of illegals, period, that are causing havoc in our country, that are a lot of people here, and President Trump and Thomas Homan and Kristi Noem have exposed them, so is Pam Bondi and Marco Rubio, for not having America's best interest at heart. We have illegal criminals, illegal terrorists that come onto college campuses, that start hatred, that start anti-Semitism on college campuses. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio revoked the visa of the guy at Columbia University, and there was a protest against that. There's a lot of other anti-Semites on college campuses that aren't even students, that are in their 30s and 40s, that are married, that are coming on college campuses and starting havoc. We saw that during the Biden-Kamala Harris administration. But again, we have a lot of illegal criminals, and there are some illegals as well that do not have America's best interest at heart, that overstay their visas, that really take advantage of the system. And that's one of the biggest themes of tonight. And one of the biggest themes that we saw at the press conference yesterday when President Trump invited the president of El Salvador, which was a huge, huge awakening for the American people to see the fake news CNN, what they did and how corrupt they are and how they twisted this whole thing about this guy from El Salvador. And another thing that was in the news, and we'll put up slide number 2. A 25-year-old Allah Akbar Mohammed Amin arrested by FBI for threatening President Trump, DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and the White House. But again, you ask yourself, how did this 25-year-old illegal get into this country? Because under the Trump administration, 2017, we had the lowest case of illegals coming into this country. Then Joe Biden and Kamala Harris come in and they tell everybody to come in here. They flood this country with illegal criminals and illegal terrorists and drug cartels, where you have massive amounts of sex trafficking and human trafficking and child trafficking. Everybody knows this. Now that President Trump is back in the White House, he promised the American people that he would get the illegal criminals out of our country. And he did. And he did. With this next slide. Quote, Maryland man. He's from El Salvador. And I wrote, he wasn't wrongly deported. Politico, of course, is fake news. Now, as you know, we are a conservative media outlet. As you know, I was heavily vetted by the White House press team to have White House credentials. And they love me because I'm part of the new conservative media. So I report fairly and I report Trump's policies correctly and how they are good for our country and good for the world. Now, this guy is from El Salvador. He's not a Maryland man. He came here illegally because of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, former DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, also because of Governor Wes Moore, Attorney General Anthony Brown. That illegal from El Salvador was allowed to stay in Maryland because of Governor. Sorry about that, folks. Somebody called me. So anyway, going back. So Governor Wes Moore and Attorney General Anthony Brown, they are the reasons why this illegal from El Salvador was able to stay in Maryland. He's not a Maryland man. He is an illegal from El Salvador. That is a left-wing CNN, MSNBC, Democrat spin. And what's going on in Maryland today? In Maryland today, you have the crazy Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland. He's a crazy. He gets bought and paid for by J Street, which is an anti-Semitic group, by the way. You can look up his FEC report. Remember I said last week, go to fec.gov to look up everybody's donation funds. And he is calling to meet up with the president of El Salvador to say, hey, this guy was illegally deported back to your country. He needs to come back. And I'm going to take a plane. And Cory Booker said, we're going to arrange a plane. Cory Booker's the senator from New Jersey. He's a crazy. We're going to get a plane together to go over to El Salvador and get that guy back because he was wrongfully deported. This is disgusting. This is disgusting. It shows you that the Democrats want illegals in this country. They care more about the illegals in this country than legal citizens of this country. Think about that. Chris Van Hollen, the senator of Maryland, Marylanders, my question is to you, because I have a lot of people from Maryland that watch my show. Do you want Chris Van Hollen to continue being your senator? Do you want him to waste taxpayer dollars to go over to El Salvador and bring an illegal back? And stupid Caitlin Collins from CNN had the audacity to ask the president of El Salvador, are you going to bring him back to America? And he goes, that is such a preposterous question. He's an illegal criminal. He said, you're basically accusing me of smuggling an illegal criminal back into the United States. That's crazy and that's asinine. It's stupid. Stupid CNN. It shows you the difference between the fake news and the real conservative news, like our outlet, which is real conservative news, and we report the facts. And the president of El Salvador, he knows that this guy was an illegal from his country. He said he needs to be in the El Salvadorian prison where he belongs. Why in the hell would he make a deal with Democrats to bring this illegal back to our country? Who has killed innocent people. He's raped innocent people. They actually found out that he was an MS-13 gang member. Two judges came to the conclusion and found out that he was an MS-13 gang member. MS-13 gang members have been on the rise since Joe Biden. Now under Trump, they've been reducing. But as you know, Governor Wes Moore, Attorney General Anthony Brown, and the Baltimore City Mayor Brandon Scott, they love these illegals here. They love MS-13 gang members here. They don't care that the crime in their city and their state is high or their counties. And you have the Baltimore City Council president lying to his Jewish constituents, saying that Baltimore City is safe and that more people are moving to Maryland, not leaving. That's crazy and that's a lie. And the Baltimore City Council president lies to his Jewish constituents again and says that the crime rate in Baltimore City is low. It's the lowest it's ever been. That's also another lie. And I've called him out on his lies. I even sent him statistics of people leaving the state of Maryland and leaving Baltimore City because of the crime, because the taxes are insane and ridiculous. But to call him a Maryland man, when we all know that he wasn't a Maryland man, is disgusting. And it's such a Democrat spin. Unlike Rachel Morin, a beautiful blonde woman who had 5 children. She was 37 years old. She was brutally murdered and raped as she was taking a run like she normally does in Hartford County. She was brutally raped and murdered by an illegal from El Salvador. And he was sentenced yesterday to jail. He was found guilty, and they say that they will sentence him to life without the possibility of parole. Now, I say, and many other people say, why doesn't that illegal from El Salvador go to El Salvador, to the Salvadorian prison? Why is he wasting taxpayer dollars staying in a Maryland prison for life? He's an illegal criminal from El Salvador. He needs to go to El Salvador. They need to deport him to El Salvador. He's an illegal immigrant, illegal criminal. Both of the attorneys said it yesterday after they read the verdict. They said he is an illegal criminal alien. That guy came here in 2019. Back and forth, came here. And again, that's on the hands of Governor Westmore. Or excuse me, he wasn't 2019. I'm sorry, he was 2023. The other guy was 2019. So this guy in 2023 under Governor Westmore, he was the new governor at the time, and Attorney General Anthony Brown, the new Attorney General in Maryland. They were cool with having this illegal in here. And Joe Biden, again, is the reason why Rachel Morin is dead. In 2019, Governor Larry Hogan was the governor of Maryland. And I can tell you that Governor Larry Hogan brought a lot of illegal Syrian and illegal Afghan and illegal Lebanese refugees into the state of Maryland. I know because I have a residency in Montgomery County, and there's a lot of illegal terrorists that live in my county, and it's very unsafe. I've called upon DHS and ICE and Thomas Homan and my friend Christy Noam and Pam Bondi to literally go to Montgomery County and continue to pull out these illegals. Again, this is why the state of Maryland needs to be sued, why Governor Westmore and the Attorney General Anthony Brown need to be charged, as well as the Baltimore City Mayor Brandon Scarb also need to be charged. And so does the comptroller, Brooke Learman, because they're all in bed together. They all need to be charged for keeping these criminals. And any mayor, any city councilman, any county councilman that supports illegal criminals in their city, in their county, in their state needs to all go to jail as well and be charged. And there's people that are running for Baltimore County Executive, like Itzi Patoka. He stands by Governor Westmore's stance to combat President Trump on illegal immigration and combating his the DEI hire executive orders that President Trump and his team put into place. It's disgusting. How many more Rachel Morins do we need? How many more people have to die in order for the Democrats to finally wake up? Why the hell are the Democrats supporting illegal criminals, illegal aliens that just continuously go through the system and overextend their visas on purpose because they know that they're staying here longer than they should. But they continuously stay here. And they know that they're committing crimes. They know it. It's disgusting. It is disgusting. And what happened to Rachel Morin and Lincoln Riley and Jocelyn and many others was because of illegal criminals that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris allowed into this country. Let's call a spade a spade. President Trump even said to the president of El Salvador, can we create prisons for illegal criminals in America? Because there's so many. There's so many. And depending on what liberal state you live in, a lot of these criminals get away with it. Like in Maryland and Michigan and Wisconsin and so forth. It's disgusting. But again, why would Senator Chris Van Hollen and Cory Booker and many others waste taxpayer dollars to have a plane to go to El Salvador to get an illegal criminal, an MS-13 gang member, back to Maryland? They lied and said that he was born in Maryland. He's a Maryland man. No, he wasn't. Or excuse me, no, he isn't. He's from El Salvador. He's an illegal criminal. He's an MS-13 gang member. Everybody knows it. Those are the facts. And then we have a domestic killing that happened in Texas with a young boy who was brutally murdered. Didn't have to be brutally murdered. There was an altercation between him and another guy on a track field. Just because one guy didn't like what the other person had to say, this guy, Carmelo Anthony, he happened to have a knife on him and he stabbed the other guy in the heart while his twin brother was watching, and his twin brother literally watched his brother die right in his arms. And we'll pull up that slide. Justin, Carmelo Anthony's bond has been lowered from $1 million to $250,000 in the murder case of Austin Metcalf. This is pathetic. What do you guys think about that? This guy, Carmelo Anthony, he murders Austin Metcalf because there was an altercation. Now, there were some reports saying that Carmelo came to the boys' tent. They were about to start a competition. It was in the rain. Carmelo comes into the tent of Metcalf's team. Carmelo and Metcalf are on different teams. And he comes in and according to some reports, Metcalf said, what are you doing here? Like, this is the tent for our team. And the guy kind of ignored him. Mr. Carmelo, he ignored him. He said, I'm staying up here. Like, I don't care. So Metcalf said, you better get out of here. Like, this is not your team. Like, this is not your tent. You better get out of here. So Carmelo said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? If you do something to me, I'm going to do something back to you. If you do something to me, I'm going to do something to you. According to some reports, Metcalf pushed, some reports said that Metcalf pushed the kid. Some reports say that Mr. Metcalf grabbed Carmelo, like grabbed his shirt. So according to Carmelo and his testimony and his attorney, they say that he was defending himself, that this was self-defense, and he took a knife out of his backpack and he stabbed Mr. Metcalf in the heart and killed him instantly on that field. And like I said, his twin brother was there and watched his brother die right in front of him. He held his dead brother in his arms. Now, a lot of people are like, who the heck brings a knife to a competition, to a track event? What the heck was this guy doing with a knife? Then I heard that the guy was accused of being possession with a knife a couple weeks ago. So this is not the first time that Mr. Carmelo had a knife on him somewhere else at some other event. And I think his parents said, well, we always have our children have some type of protection on them in case, God forbid, somebody, tries to roughhouse them. They got to be able to protect themselves, But the theory of this, the timing of this, the fact that instead of Mr. Carmelo maybe pushing Mr. Metcalf off of him or saying like, hey, man, but the fact that he got a knife out and intentionally stuck him in the heart. It's not like he stuck him in the arm or he stuck him in the stomach. He knows where the heart is. To me, as an outsider reading this, it looked like he intentionally meant to kill the kid. That it was intentional. That's why this whole thing just seems very shady and very, very, very tough. Very tough to wrap around. And some people say, we have to wait for the trial. You're innocent until proven guilty. Carmelo Anthony says that it was self-defense. That's why he killed the guy. Metcalf's family is saying the guy had a knife. You don't go to a track meet with a knife. And why would you stab my brother in the heart? You intentionally meant to kill him. There could have been other ways here. Could have talked out. We could have used our fists. Why do you have to use a knife? And of course, Metcalf's family is completely destroyed. But the weird thing is of all this is that the Carmelo family was raising money for their son and for themselves, saying, oh, the cost of legal fees is going to be so expensive. And we got to move. We got to go to a gated community now because we're getting racist threats. We got to pay for security now. They raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in a very short period of time on a give, send, go. And people thought it was really disgusting. They were like, your son murdered another kid. People are saying your son is a murderer. Why are you raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for your son who is a murderer? And Carmelo Anthony's family is like, well, my son's a good kid. He's a straight A student. He's never done this before. He's got a big future ahead of him. He was just defending himself. And we got to get out of here. We got to get out of the mess that we're in. And we got to go to a bigger house, a mansion. So after they took down some of their donations, they still kept up their give, send, go. And $400,000 of that went for them to buy a brand new home, which is a mansion in a gated community. Gated communities are $1 million homes plus. Just to let you know, I know a lot of people live in gated communities. Those are not cheap homes. Those are $1 million homes plus with security. Security is also expensive. How much do you think security detail is? It's not $25 an hour. It can cost thousands of dollars for security, especially if it's 24/7 security. So this guy is using your taxpayer dollars to get him a brand new house and security. And how long is he going to live in that house? Does he think he's just going to walk? We hope that somebody filmed this entire incident. And Austin Metcalf's brother, his testimony will be the most powerful testimony. It'll be a very important testimony that all of us have to listen to and hear, because that's going to be the crux of what happened on that day. But the fact that his family raised all this money, it doesn't look good at all. It doesn't look good. And if I'm a jury looking at this, I'd be like, what the hell? You don't see Metcalf's family raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think they raised some money for funeral expenses, but they didn't go to 50 million different donation sites to collect all this money. People are saying that what the Anthony family is doing is they're using this as a reparations thing, as an entitlement. Well, my son's black. He's getting attacked because he's black. So we got to raise all this money to be safe because my son is black and he's getting ridiculed because he's black. This is not a white-black thing. This is not a racist thing. This should not be a racist thing. It's the fact that Carmelo Anthony, it's the fact that that guy had a knife on him and he stabbed Mr. Metcalf directly in the heart. One-time stab. Wasn't like he stabbed him in the arm, stabbed in this. And again, Mr. Metcalf didn't have a knife on him. Self-defense would be if one guy's got a gun pointing at you and you got another gun pointing at him. Or if one guy shoots you first, then you shoot the other guy. That's self-defense. But if words were just said, you don't take a knife and kill somebody. But again, the left is supporting Mr. Carmelo Anthony. The left is okay with this, just like the left is okay with people raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for Luigi Maggione, who brutally murdered the CEO of United Healthcare. They called him a god. All these women and these gay guys were like loving Luigi. And he's a murderer. He is a real murderer. That was premeditated murder. He knew exactly where the CEO of the company was going to be on that day. And he built a gun to kill the guy. I don't think it was his first rodeo either. We're curious to see that trial. Pam Bondi's trying to get the death penalty on that guy. But Texas has the death penalty. Texas, I don't think is going to let this one fly. I think they're really going to put the book on Mr. Carmelo. But we'll see. We'll see how the evidence goes. We'll see how the trial goes. But my question is to you and my viewers. Do you think this was self-defense? Do you think that Mr. Carmelo, that his family, that the Anthony family, it was okay for them to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars and buy a brand new mansion and new security and all this stuff? Do you think that Mr. Metcalf was wrong here? He shouldn't have spoken words with the kid. And if he did shove him, he shouldn't have. Or do you think that the Metcalf family should be getting hundreds of thousands of dollars on their end? Because their son is gone. Austin's brother, twin brother, will never see his brother again. It's a life taken forever. forever taken. It's really sad. And our hearts go out to the Metcalf family. When I first heard about this, I couldn't believe it. I was sickened by it. Why should Carmelo Anthony be in possession of a knife? Unbelievable. Dumb. Very dumb. It didn't have to be that way. Austin Metcalf didn't have to die. He should be alive today. You don't just kill someone because you don't like what they say. There's other ways, other means. Again, if Austin had a knife on him or if he had a gun on him, that's a whole different story. You think about the Kyle Rittenhouse story. There was a guy with a gun hurting him with the gun on it, like punching him in the head and threatening to kill him, and even said, "I will kill you." And Kyle was on the ground, and that's why he shot the guy, and that was self-defense. That's why Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted. But this is a whole different story, whole different scenario. And again, I hope that there is video on this. Again, like I said, the testimony of Austin's brother will be the most powerful testimony that we'll hear, because he will tell the story in real time because he was there. He's the main witness. And we'll see and hear from other witnesses as well. But the fact that the bond was dropped from $1 million to $250,000 to me was insane. The fact that Mr. Carmelo Anthony is on house arrest now, but he's living in this beautiful big mansion with heightened security until he's sentenced, or I should say until the trial starts. Because remember, Mr. Carmelo Anthony, he admitted that he did it. He admitted that he did it. But until he's sentenced, or excuse me, until he goes through a judge and they say, how do you plead? Do you plead guilty or not guilty? And if you plead not guilty, you go through a trial. But I know the American people really hope that there's justice here. They really hope that the Metcalf family gets some kind of justice. Because I'm telling you, it doesn't look good on Carmelo Anthony's side. If I was a juror, I would not like what I saw, or I would not like what I'm seeing from the Carmelo Anthony side. But I'm not the judge, I'm not the jury. I want my viewers to be the judge and the jury on this. I want to know your thoughts. Well, coming up after the break, we're going to have a wonderful next segment. It's going to talk about President Trump, his health, and what his plans are for the future of this country. And we'll be right back after the break.
Home videotapes that you're no longer able to watch? Need them transferred to DVD, Blu-ray, or your smart device? Baltimore Digital offers professional-grade VHS, mini DV, and high 8 digitizing services. We can also convert Super 8mm film too. Baltimore Digital also provides photo restoration services. Visit archive.baltimoredigital.net. Mention code Alexandra for a 10% introductory discount.
And hello, everyone. This is Alexandra Levine live with the America's Pulse Network. You are all in with Alexandra Levine. Our next segment, President Trump's health and his endurance. We'll put up the first slide. So this is interesting, and Steve Bannon has brought this up before. President Trump is going to run for a third term, and President Trump is going to be elected again on the afternoon of January 20th of 2029. Now, as you know, under the current U.S. Constitution, Donald Trump cannot legally run for a third term as president. The Second Amendment was ratified in 1951 because under FDR, we were allowed to have third terms. And then in 1951, it was ratified. The Second Amendment was ratified. But the reason that Steve Bannon brings this up is because we all know now that the 2020 election was screwed. There was total fraud. President Trump got screwed on the election. He was supposed to win in 2020. Everybody knows he was supposed to win in 2020. But it didn't happen. And then, of course, we got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And then, as you know, we had 4 years of hell. President Trump had to win again in 2024 to take us out of the socialist direction that we were headed towards. But I can tell you, President Trump is doing a damn good job. He's signing executive orders like no other. He is getting the job done faster than he did in 2017, and he's got the right people around him, specifically in his cabinet. Marco Rubio has been doing a great job. I know Pam Bondi is getting crap from people, but she is doing a good job. It's just taking a little bit longer. I know her. She was my Florida Attorney General. She's a very thorough Attorney General, and she goes by the book and she follows the law. So I tell my viewers, just, hold on before you start to attack her. And President Trump even said in the Oval Office today yesterday that she's doing a great job. Kash Patel is doing a great job. Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., all the big heads are doing a very good job. Elon Musk at Doge. These are very good people that President Trump has around him. Dan Scavino Jr., Stephen Miller. I mean, these people know the law like no other. Kristi Noem. Good people that are surrounded around President Trump, and they're getting the job done for we the people. And the question is, if J.D. Vance becomes the president in 2028, is he going to be like President Trump? Is he going to implement the same executive orders that President Trump is doing? Is he going to basically follow the America First agenda and the MAGA movement? It's very hard to go from someone who is never a politician to go to someone who has a little bit of time in the Senate and maybe, like I said, former congressmen, other congressmen, people that have been in politics for a while. It's hard to go back to that. Again, we don't want to go back to the rhinos. We don't want to go back to the days of old. We want to continue this pattern, this pathway that President Trump has installed. And to be honest with you, the only person that can really implement President Trump's agenda is President Trump. The runners up are his children. There's been talk about Don Jr. being president in 2028, Eric Trump in 2032, and I know people want Barron in 2044. And I know people don't like dynasties because we had a Bush dynasty. But you know what? This is different. This is different because President Trump, as you know, was never a politician. He doesn't consider himself a politician to this day. And his movement is working. His policies are working. How could we want to go back? Another scenario is that J.D. Vance runs in 2028. President Trump runs as his VP. The day that J.D. Vance is sworn in as president, he decides, you know what? I'm going to step down. I'm not going to be president of the United States. And I'm going to give it to my VP, Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump becomes the president again. That is another scenario that I've heard. That's legal under the Constitution. That can also happen. That is a true scenario. Now, the question is, does President Trump want to serve a third term? Now, he's close to Steve Bannon. He does talk to Steve Bannon. So maybe Steve Bannon knows something that we don't. Remember, Steve Bannon worked for him in the White House. And Steve Bannon is kicking butt with the war room. But you never know. You never know what's said behind closed doors. But if the country keeps going in the right direction, why would we want anybody else but Donald Trump? Again, we hope that J.D. Vance will be like a Donald Trump. We hope. But we don't know. J.D. Vance is not Donald Trump. And again, his children are the people that President Trump trusts the most. Don Jr. has been touring across this country, heavily campaigning for his father. Eric Trump, as you know, owns the Trump Organization, Trump Winery, Trump Hotels. Ivanka Trump, she's a very successful businesswoman herself with her husband, Jared. Jared and Ivanka both worked in the White House for the president the first term. And don't underestimate Tiffany Trump. She's smart as a whip. Her father-in-law is very involved with the Trump administration. Her husband, his family are billionaires in the car business. They do a lot of business dealings in the Middle East. And Barron Trump is a very smart young man. Very smart. He's just turned 19 years old, but he's as sharp as a whip and gives a lot of money to charities. I can tell you, Barron Trump is actually a client of the Pierce Bespoke suit industry. Pierce Bespoke was created by a guy named Nathan Pierce. I can tell you about the Pierce Bespoke business because my family actually owns one of the franchises with Pierce Bespoke out in St. Petersburg, Florida. So the suit that Barron Trump wore to the inauguration was created and tailored by Nathan Pierce of Pierce Bespoke. Again, my family owns a franchise with Pierce Bespoke. And Nathan, there was a beautiful article about Nathan Pierce of Barron Trump in the Wall Street Journal about how Nathan went to Mar-a-Lago and he met up with Barron and he went to New York and Barron picked out his entire suit with Nathan by himself independently. And Nathan said, it was like talking to a grown man, very mature young man, very smart young man, had great attention to detail, knew exactly how his suit wanted to look, how it wanted to be prepared, how it wanted to be measured. Nobody knows that side of Barron. And Barron looks just like his father. He's a spitting image, younger version of him. And he's tall. He's 6'9". Have we ever had a 6'9" president? I don't think so. I wouldn't mind if Barron Trump becomes a president in 2044. I'm all for it. I think it'd be fabulous, to be honest with you. I think it'd be really good and really cool. Again, who can implement President Trump's agenda better than his children? But hey, if President Trump wants to run for a third term, I'll be honest with you, I'm all for it. Under President Trump, things in my life have been good. Under President Trump, things in a lot of people's lives have been good. I go into that White House briefing room, it is like a breath of fresh air. Because Caroline Leavitt is so good and so superb at her job, and she's sharp as a whip, and she's so smart. And she gives everyone, the proper people a chance to speak. The fact that she allows new conservative media in there, podcasters such as myself, it's a blessing and it's a privilege and an honor. I love how she gives us a voice because for far too long, the White House Correspondent Association controlled the power of the purse. Not anymore. The liberals controlled the media in the White House briefing room. Not anymore. Caroline Leavitt wants to hear from people like myself and others that are conservative, that will report fairly, that will ask the president proper questions and not demean and demoralize him and accuse him of this and accuse him of that and say, well, Mr. President, you said this, and Mr. President, you said that, and Mr. President, you said you were going to do this and you're not doing that. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They want you to talk about the accomplishments and acknowledge the fact that they got rid of illegal criminals out of this country, that they're continuing to deport illegal criminals, that they're continuing to reduce the sex trafficking, the drug trafficking out of our country. The fact that they have done so many great executive orders to help facilitate goodness. Remember what I said. President Trump wants to make America rich again, make America strong again, make America healthy again. He campaigned on all of those things and he is keeping those promises. So why does the fake news like CNN and the New York Times and MSNBC and NBC and Associated Press, why can't they acknowledge that? God forbid. Associated Press was kicked out because they keep being negative on President Trump and they won't acknowledge the Gulf of America. It is signed into law that it is now the Gulf of America. It's on the map, the Google Maps. You can go to Google Maps on an iPhone. It says Gulf of America. Why would you combat that, Associated Press? You're stupid. The more these liberal media outlets continue to demean and demoralize and try to diminish President Trump and his administration, they're not going to have a voice anymore. They're going to be out of there. And the liberal spin is disgusting. Again, what I said in my first segment, they called this guy from El Salvador the quote, the Maryland man. They said he was wrongfully deported. Not true. He was not from Maryland. He was living in Maryland illegally. Everybody knows that. MS-13 gang member. The fact that anyone is okay with an MS-13 gang member staying in the country, that's crazy to me. The fact that CNN would protect these illegal criminals is crazy to me. And President Trump is right. Nobody listens to Caitlin Collins' show. She's boring. And the weird thing is that girl used to work for Turning Point USA. She used to be, quote, conservative, but Jeff Zucker from CNN paid her a buttload of money to be a liberal beep. And that's what she is. When socialists and Democrats and liberalism come at you and dangle a bunch of money in front of you, you kowtow to it. You change your principles and hardcore beliefs for the money. It's sick and it's sad. How can you go from being a part of Turning Point USA to working for a left-wing media outlet, CNN? But she doesn't give a darn because she has her own show on CNN. She's at the White House. She doesn't care. She doesn't care because she gets paid at the end of the day. I really hope that she realizes that some of the things coming out of her mouth are crazy. And they just get crazier every single day. She is there to cause havoc and to start havoc with the president. And she's rude and obnoxious, and she just spews out a question when she's not even called on. That's the fake news media that President Trump was talking about. That's the media he doesn't want in the White House. That's why he has people like myself in the White House, because we report fairly on him and we treat him fairly. You don't come in as a White House reporter and push out false narratives against the president and his administration. Then you're just an opinion piece at that point. You're spewing out political bias at that point. You're not a real reporter at that point. So at that point, you get the hell out. If you want to go write a blog and just write negative things about the president, you got to give him right to do that. No one will read it, but you got the God-given right to do it. People would rather you do that than go into the White House and start trouble. I mean, it's comic relief. It really is. It's comic relief what she does. But it's not funny when she's putting people's lives in danger with her falseness, her fake reporting, and so forth. And another reason why Steve Bannon said that President Trump is going to go for a third term is because of his health. President Trump just came out with a report from his doctor, and we'll put up the first slide of that, where it shows how healthy he is. He's 78 years old. He is 224 pounds. He actually lost 20 pounds from his first term to this current term. His blood pressure was 128/74, which is very good for someone his age and height. And he had a benign colonoscopy. They said his eyesight was very good. His heart rate was very good. His oxygen level was at 99%, which is amazing. That means he can breathe. They said his lungs were clear. He didn't have any issues with his heart. They said that they tested him for any type of gallbladder issues, stomach issues. We'll pull up the second slide of President Trump. There we go. They said he hasn't taken 1 ounce of tobacco or alcohol. The only medications he's on is on a couple cholesterol pills, an aspirin for cardiac prevention, and he has to take something for his skin. He has some skin issues from, I think it's from golfing all these years. Because sometimes when you don't put on proper sunscreen, you can get melasma, you can get melanoma, you can get some rosacea. So he has to use a skin treatment for his skin. But all in all, I mean, his health is amazing for someone his age. I always say he's the best 78-and-a-half-year-old man I've ever seen in my life. He's so good looking. And then we'll put up the third slide of his health. And yeah, and that just brings up his vital signs, talks about how healthy he is, how his brain is functioning amazingly. And also he took a cognitive test and he got 30 out of 30. Now, I can tell you for a fact, and President Trump said this too, he says, I don't know any other president that took a cognitive test. He's like, I think I'm the only one. He's like, I don't think President Bush Sr. or Jr. took one. He said Obama didn't take one. Biden certainly didn't take one. There was question with a doctor from Biden that they said that Biden is not, his mind isn't healthy enough to stand trial. That's how bad he was. And again, we found out that Mr. Joe Biden does have dementia and that his mind is declining and that people knew he had dementia, including his wife, and they still continued him being the president, him governing, being the commander in chief, having the nuclear codes. That's why President Trump, he revoked his ability to have the nuclear codes because his mind is not capable. And he revoked a lot of things from his children. He revoked his children's Secret Service because he said, why are the taxpayers paying for Hunter Biden, to go to overseas with Ellen DeGeneres and her wife? I thought he was broke. He said he was broke, but he's wasting taxpayer dollars. So he's like, cut that off. I mean, President Trump was smart to do that. I mean, this guy's cognitive ability was declining, but yet he was governing our country here. He was the commander in chief, which he really wasn't. He and Kamala Harris were the Manchurian candidates. But you cannot question President Trump's capability. You cannot question his endurance. The man is constantly on the move. I know 20 and 30-year-olds that don't have the energy like President Trump. President Trump gets about 4 hours of sleep and his mind is constantly going. Sometimes he doesn't sleep at all. I know for the inauguration, I think he didn't sleep for 24 to 40 hours. The night of the election day, he was up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes he'll be up till midnight and then he'll fly from Mar-a-Lago up to DC, and he won't get back to DC till maybe like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And he goes to sleep for an hour and then he wakes up and starts his day. That's President Trump. And he doesn't look tired at all or haggard at all. He's got the strength. He's got the endurance. He's got the power. That's why he likes people who work, who come into the office. Remember, he's a builder. It's very, very, very important. Very important that people understand this. That this man ain't going anywhere. That's why he does these medical tests. That's why he shows you the test that he gets at Walter Reed, and he releases that. I've never seen a president release his medical records to the country and the world. And he shows that to his enemies as well. Because if you don't think his enemies are seeing these medical records, of course they are. They want to know his capabilities. That's why all of our enemies took advantage of us under Biden, because they knew his cognitive ability was declining. They knew that they could get away with all this crap. But they did. But now they know under Trump, they can't get away with any of it. That's why Trump is doing everything he can to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. That's why President Trump is doing everything he can to end the war in the Middle East. That's why President Trump is doing everything he can to make sure that China doesn't go into war with Taiwan. That's why he's pushing the tariffs on them. That's why he's doing everything he can to remove the Chinese from owning American farmland, which is disgusting, by the way. That's why he wants to make everything in America and hire American, buy American. That's why it's so important that we put America first. It's so important that we go back to the days of old where America was respected. When America wasn't respected under Biden, a lot of havoc happened. A lot of havoc happened. So just remember that we have a strong 78-and-a-half-year-old man. And Steve Bannon is predicting that he'll run for a third term. Now, I don't know if I see Congress changing the Constitution on this one. I mean, they won't even change the Constitution and give themselves term limits. But remember, President Trump is the head of the Republican Party, and he is the president of the United States. He will pressure Congress. If he wants a third term, he will pressure them to change the Constitution. Now, I can tell you a lot of people are not happy with that scenario. It's not a popular thing. They feel he's serving his 2 terms, he's done. But again, Steve Bannon said he didn't serve 2 consecutive terms. He got screwed in 2020. So technically, he can serve again because they're not consecutive terms. Let me pose a question to my audience. Do you think that President Trump got screwed and he should serve a third term? Or do you think that this should be it? Do his 4 years, give it to J.D. Vance, or maybe give it to his children? Or if he does give it to J.D. Vance, should Donald Trump be the vice president and J.D. Vance resigns and says, I'm not going to be the president. I'm going to step down and have President Trump be the president again. Like I said, that's another scenario that can happen in the Constitution. So I pose those 3 questions to you. Number 1, third term for President Trump, if we change the Constitution. Number 2, let J.D. Vance just be the president. Number 3, let J.D. Vance become the president, let Donald Trump be the vice president, and have J.D. Vance step down and give it to Donald Trump as the president again. Or the number 4 scenario, should President Trump have his children run? Should it be Don Jr. this time? Or Eric Trump? Should one of his sons take over and continue the Trump legacy? So those are 4 scenarios, guys. 4 things to think about. But either way, I'm enjoying this term. I'm enjoying everything that President Trump is doing and saying. It's helping we the people. We the people are not depressed anymore. We the people don't have as much anxiety and depression. We the people are happier. I can tell you that. And the people that are still complaining, I think they just complain to complain. But you have to sit back and watch, eat the popcorn, enjoy the show. Remember, President Trump has to clean up a whole 4 years of crap. And he's dealing with liberal governors too, and liberal attorney generals and all this stuff. A lot of Democrats don't want him to succeed. We still have rhinos that are trying to hurt him. But we, the people that voted for him, not the people in Congress, but we, the people who really love him, who really trust him, need to stand with him and help him and stand by his side. And be loyal to him, because President Trump is all about loyalty. I mean, just show the president we're still with him. I mean, just show the president that we care about him and care about what he's doing, because he needs our help. He needs our loyalty. He needs our friendship. He needs our strength and endurance as well. And coming up after the break, we have a special new segment I'm going to introduce right after the break. Hi, I'm Alexandra Levine. I'm a professional opera singer, actress, TV, and radio personality. Since 2015, I've been a volunteer, a field director, and a campaign manager, learning the ins and outs of the political world. That's why I became a political consultant. My job is to lead you to victory with organization, structure, and the mindset of winning for your district or state. With my guidance and direction, I can keep you focused on the things that matter to the people and advise you on key issues that need to be addressed. If you're a serious candidate that is serious about winning, then book a consultation with me today. Go to levineconsulting.co. You'll be happy you did. Hey guys, Alexandra Levine Live. Well, we have added a special segment to Alexandra Levine Live with our very own Tim Fazenbaker. It is now Faze time with Tim Fazenbaker. Enjoy.
All right, joining me now is a special guest, Sean Maloney. He's the president of SM Mechanical, someone I met recently while we were discussing issues about the energy crisis going on in Maryland and other states. Sean, welcome, and thank you for joining.
I appreciate you having me.
Sean, tell us a little bit about what you do and why it's relevant to this topic about energy going crazy in Maryland.
So I own a local HVAC company mainly, and a lot of the stuff that we do, obviously, the largest power consuming device in your house is your heating and air conditioning system. So everything that we do business wise revolves around energy and what's good for customers as far as their upfront cost and long term what they're going to get the most out of money wise. So naturally, I pay attention to these kind of things. And we also have I'm the president of a local trade association for HVAC contractors, which also allows me the opportunity to get a little bit more involved in the legislative aspects of Maryland. There's a lot of laws that are going on that are affecting that. Obviously, everyone's well aware of how high energy bills have come, and one of the things that we kind of see going forward is typically gas prices and grocery prices are front and center on what's very important to people's budgets in their homes. Now, energy has kind of rivaled that, especially in the wintertime and summertime. So, these are the things where we have to start paying attention to what the legislators are doing, who's behind it, and what's the reasoning for it. There's a lot of misinformation. I hate to use that word. It's probably one of the most overused words in the last several years. But that's exactly what it is. And so I've kind of learned a lot about that and where the truth is coming in on it. Because obviously if there's scapegoats that aren't the real culprits, that's not going to make any change, because then we don't know who to really blame and who to go after and how it's going to affect them.
Right. That's kind of what is is behind a lot of people's thoughts. Like, where is this coming from? And to give you an example, for me personally, I remember, your BGE bill used to be, say, $150 if you lived in a townhome or a regular, home, maybe 20 years ago. And of course, it's gone up, expected to go up over the years. But it was January, and I remember I happened to get an email about my BGE bill, which I know is owned by Exelon, which maybe we'll talk about them in a second here.
Mhm.
And the bill was almost $600. Now I've seen other people talking about their bills have been doubled and they're over 1,000. I kind of put that to my wife had bought some new lights for Christmas and things like that. And then I noticed in February, my January bill was almost $600 again. That's when I really started digging into, hey, what's going on? And then I kind of remember some of the things that were going on. So you, you go to Annapolis and represent your trade, and I guess you talk about what's going on. What is it that you are seeing in Annapolis, or other way, or is it the power companies, the energy companies that are actually making these prices skyrocket in Maryland?
So it's a combination of things, right? Some of it is the utility companies. So I work a lot with utility companies. I have biweekly meetings with utility companies on some of the things that they're doing, representing contractors, giving our input because we have a lot of the common sense that comes down to us because we're out there, we're sitting at your kitchen table, and we're also residents of the state of Maryland, right? So we're paying our own bills, so we kind of know what affects it, what's good, what's not. So the utility companies are partially to blame. Obviously, everybody, hey, BG victims, Delmarva victims, Exelon, all that. But what everybody has to remember is that utility companies in Maryland are regulated, which means that they don't set the price. They have to submit reports based on what the PSC, the Public Service Commission, they're the ones who are in charge of everything. So they're the ones who affect the rates. They approve the rates, any work, any increases. Those are all things that basically the PSC represents the state. An agenda gets handed down to the PSC, and the PSC they implement that. They ask the utility companies, hey, how much is it going to cost the ratepayers? If you do this kind of work, and then they give multiple scenarios, and then the PSC says, okay, we choose this one. All the scenarios are extremely expensive because the agenda is a green energy agenda, which is ultimately ridiculously expensive. Maryland is already importing roughly 40% of all our electricity today as it stands right now. So obviously, bringing that in, it's coming from another state, and then there's going to be, whatever charges there are for that. We're getting ready to close Brandon Shores Power Plant. We have to supplement that from somewhere else. That's where you're getting into all these transmission lines. The transmission lines are going into Pennsylvania, basically stemming from places like 3 Mile Island, from nuclear, coming from Virginia, whatever it is, whatever makes the most sense. The utility companies, they're not going to do this for free. It's a ton of work, and then it's all tied into the distribution charges. That's where you're going to see the biggest part. And the distribution charges tie into the usage. So when your usage goes up, the distribution charges correlatingly goes up as well. And then on the gas side, if you're somebody who has gas and electric, you're really getting hit twice because there's a law called the Stride Law, legislation that's put in 2013. And what that does is, and this is where, on one hand, you got to look at it as the state is pushing this and saying, hey, we want you to do this work, which is going to cost the ratepayer a lot more money, but it's incentivized. So that Stride program, we have some of probably the oldest gas infrastructure in the entire country around like the Baltimore, Washington area. So yeah, it does need to be replaced. We need gas. It does need to be replaced, updated. But where the utility companies are taking advantage of this is if you tell a business, here is a law that says that we will incentivize you heavily to do this work and we will pay you for it. What do you think that company is going to do? They're going to take full advantage of it. And they're going to do a hell of a lot of work. And then that bill is being footed by us as the ratepayers. So there's kind of, I wouldn't even say equal blame. The majority of the blame does come down to the state because everything right now currently is about electrification. My biggest problem that I have with electrification is it's being spoken about like it's clean. You have to understand where is the electricity coming from. So it's the old meme of if you have an electric car, you can say it doesn't have any carbon emissions, but then you see the extension cord, where you have it plugged in, it's going around the corner, and then somebody's pouring, gas into a gas generator, and then the exhaust coming off of that. That's my problem, right? So we're paying a hell of a lot of money to basically create this electricity using fossil fuels, and then we're pretending that it's clean energy when power plants are spewing all the same carbon emissions. So we're now basically getting the same uh, the same result, whether it's coming from gas or whether it's coming from electricity. We're paying way more than we should for the same result.
Yeah, it's that adage that you're getting these electric vehicles, but the coal plants are in, say, China, so it's out of sight, out of mind. Well, if it's polluted over there, in a sense, doesn't matter because I feel good because I'm doing something great here. But you talked about the PSC. Who runs the PSC?
So the PSC, I believe it's Hoover is the chair of the PSC, and these are all, there's, I believe, four different people in the PSC, and they go on 5-year terms, I believe,
Hmm.
and they're governor appointed. So currently, I believe there are three Democrats and one Republican, and the one Republican, his term is up in June, I believe. So more than likely, we're going to have four Democrats that are on there, and naturally, we already have a very, very green agenda moving forward. If you go back, if you want to do research on it, one of the biggest culprits for all this is the Climate Solution Now Act of 2022. Governor Hogan was very, very much against it. He put out a pretty scathing letter, saying that this is going to be really, really horrible for all Marylanders moving forward. But he didn't veto it, not because he was against it, but because he knew that he was going to be he was going to be outvoted by the legislature. So either way, it was going to pass into law. So he let it sit on his desk and come into law. But that's a huge thing. Another thing that kind of went under the radar recently was last June. Governor Moore enacted an executive order that is going to ban the sale of all gas, oil, and propane equipment in the state of Maryland starting in 2029 for heating systems in your home and also hot water systems. So you live, you live where you live, right? You probably
Yeah.
have gas or oil. So as it stands right now, 2029, if you go to replace your furnace or your water heater and you have gas or oil doing that, you're gonna have to pay a lot of money to convert over to electricity, which could end up being double the cost. So the average cost to replace a system somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000. It might be $20,000 now. So I hope that clean air is really, really worth it because most people are not going to be able to afford this.
And people aren't even changing their filters. I have a little bit of knowledge about HVAC stuff, and I know that's a pet peeve for you guys. They're not changing the filters, and who knows what's going to happen with the systems in the future. You talked a little bit about Maryland's importing a lot of their electric, in a sense, from, say, Pennsylvania, with their transmission lines coming from there. Is Pennsylvania actually making any revenue off of exporting that electricity to us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they're more than willing to increase the amount of electricity because they're making money off of it. Whatever they charge, there are some laws in Maryland where they're supposed to be looking into whatever the cheapest option is. Whether it be out of state or whether it's in state. I have a hard time believing that buying anything, importing anything from out of state is cheaper than producing it yourself when you have the means. So I kind of feel like there's always those chances of everything being manipulated. I'll give you another example of manipulation when it comes to that again. In the Climate Solution Now Act of 2022, one of the things that was included in that was they had to do a study to see if the existing power grid in Maryland could handle full electrification of the state. And I think they had like 3 or 4 months to come back with that information. And we waited on it. And first deadline went by, second deadline went by. It was almost a full year later when they initially had only maybe 3 months. And what do you think? What do you think it came back with? Oh yeah, the state can handle full electrification, which I could have saved them a lot of money. Common sense, we're not even close to handling it. Now here we are with the new AI data centers that
Hmm.
we don't have enough electricity for. We have these transmission lines coming down from Pennsylvania, coming across Carroll County, Frederick County, Baltimore County, that everybody's obviously really outraged about. If our power grid can handle the electrification, why don't we have enough power for the data centers? Why don't we have enough power for these other things? So you can already see there's always manipulation. Everything comes down to what do you want and then just kind of make the data say that it makes sense even though it doesn't.
I'm glad you brought up the AI data centers because we've seen in like Texas that they're building that infrastructure so that these AI warehouse centers are going into place. A lot of people don't understand what that really is, but something, I live down in Sparrows Point, and there's been a lot of talk about what's happened with Bethlehem Steel and what they've been replacing things with here. That's something I thought, what, if we had that type of work with AI and we could lead, be the leader in the AI infrastructure, that would be amazing. You're outside DC. You have a lot of people in that 270 corridor also who are, they're scientists, they're working with AI type stuff. Penn State is known for engineering and their science programs. Maryland's an engineering school. These are a great place to have the AI. We don't have the infrastructure to be able to handle that. That our politicians in this state will just basically sugarcoat it or lie in a sense and say, yeah, we have enough. But then when push comes to shove, we find out we really don't. Why? What are they gaining from actually not telling us the full truth?
Well, I think what they're gaining is that you still have to fall within the party lines, within the party agenda. And right now, the most important thing is electrification, right? Because everything is about carbon emissions being reduced. We obviously have to bring in AI. One of the biggest problems that we have, and I think with this new budget bill that just passed, that they just talked about last week, that they've been arguing about, obviously this multi-billion-dollar budget deficit. We have to find the money to pay for whatever it is that we're doing. I mean, the nice thing about Maryland that separates us from a lot of other states that do a lot of spend and tax like we do is that the Maryland Constitution does state we have to have a balanced budget every year.
Yep.
If California, New Jersey, and a lot of these other states like that had the same type of constitution, they wouldn't be in the dire straits they are financially because they just continue to spend whether they got it or not, and then figure out how to pay for it later. Maryland, we have to account for that. But you also see now we're just getting silly with all the increased taxes. And the biggest thing is, and this is another one of those lies or manipulations, whatever you want to call it, me being a business owner, I know this firsthand. Whether you say that businesses need to pay their fair share, or we're going to increase corporate taxes, business taxes, whatever you want to call it, these are all indirect taxes to consumers, and it's becoming more and more business unfriendly. Several years ago, the state was on the right track of being business friendly. What happens when you're business friendly? Not only do you create new jobs, but you also invite investors from out of state. Maryland has a lot of upside with all the connections we have being in the backyard of DC. So we get a lot of federal money. The state is the richest state in the entire country per capita, which kind of says a lot for how small we are. But we have a lot of the military complex, a lot of a lot of the engineering that goes into DC. We don't take enough advantage of that. And one of the big things that you just saw recently in the last week was Delegate Crosby. He's pretty prominent in the Democratic Party, for Maryland. He has his own company, and it's a IT company, and he's moving that company to Virginia because he said that his company would go out of business within 6 months with the new taxes that are that are being implemented on businesses in this new bill. All in all, this is not good for Maryland because as companies do leave, that's less tax money, and then we have to increase taxes in other ways. So just less and less business value.
Yeah, now businesses, well, someone like you're from the area. You went to Calvert Hall. We were just talking about that as well. You're a Miami Hurricane alum. I'm a Notre Dame guy, so we'll get into that another time. But the, you came back and you started your own business here, and this is kind of what America's all about. You got a family guy who grows up in an area, and you end up creating jobs, and you're doing something. It's not the most glamorous work, doing HVAC stuff or mechanical type stuff, but you understand that this is what people need. So with a person like you, everyday type American who sees like Delegate Crosby say, I'm voting for something even though it hurts me, and he's moving his business. Why is it that businesses can still stay afloat? And what are your thoughts? Like, you're tied here, but would you move your business if things continue to get worse and go to another state?
So I'll tell you this much: I'm very jealous of Delegate Crosby because he's got a business that he's able to just pick up and move.
Yeah.
When you have a business that doesn't, it's not a brick and mortar business. I mean, we're not in retail, per se. We're not selling anything where I can ship it, but we're closer to brick and mortar than he is because
Yeah.
I have employees, I have a customer base. I can't just pick that up and move that, somewhere else. And I'm finding myself more and more saying, like, I'm not going anywhere. I love Maryland, but it's getting tough, man. I just bought some property up in Falston in Harford County, but I am local. I'm from Essex. I live in Joppa right now in Harford County, but yeah, obviously if I'm getting ready to build a house, that kind of tells you I'm not planning on going anywhere, anytime soon. And as long as I'm a business owner, which I plan on being, it's kind of I'm torn. Do I want to be here? Do I not want to be here? But I'm kind of I'm rooted. So yeah, if I could, I absolutely would.
Yeah, I own a few properties. I don't usually talk about it, but I have a few properties in Hartford County myself. And I sold everything I have in Baltimore County except where I live right now. And it's because it's a little more friendly to work and live in Hartford County than it is in Baltimore County. And that's just a local indication of what's coming with the state. We've seen this mass exodus of people that left Baltimore City from, over 1 million when you and I were kids to a little over 500,000 now. They go into the counties and then they continue to get pushed and squeezed. So they leave the state and they move into Pennsylvania, which I owned a house in Pennsylvania as well because I was like, I was looking for friendlier options, but people have left this state in a sense, and they're going to be continuing to leave because of the federal jobs that are going to be lost, which is a whole nother subject. So Maryland, in a sense, is going to be really strong with how they're going to bring in revenue. They can only tax people like you and me a certain amount. So obviously, you kind of talked about the Democrat Party in Maryland, how they have the agenda, which is green energy. Whether that's actually a thing that will make a difference or not, that's a whole nother discussion. Generally, a lot of people will believe that it's a scam, and there's some benefit into some of these things that they're doing. We don't want clean, we don't want dirty air and dirty water, obviously, but some of this stuff it seems like it's a money grab. But who else in Annapolis can we count on and go to say, hey, this is what we need to support this type of person because they're putting forth legislation that actually is for the everyday Marylander? Is there anybody down there that is a friend to regular people like us?
I mean, yeah, obviously, there's if you look at who's voting on what, there's a lot of Republicans, that are very active in that, and naturally, the Republicans when they come out, Morgan and Graham, people like that, they're really the easiest thing to say is they're telling the truth. There's a lot of conjecture. There seems to be mainly conjecture from the Democrat Party because if it's not true, well then spin it or focus on the things that kind of push people away from common sense, right? Um, when you're bringing in all these jobs and tout like Governor Moore is touting that he's creating all these jobs, a government job, you can't take credit as creating a job when it's not bringing in its own revenue to pay for itself. It's not a private business. It's not me hiring people. That's creating a job. When you hire 5,000 new employees in the last 2 years, and then that adds to the budget deficit, you can't claim that you created 5,000 jobs. You created more tax needs to pay for those jobs. You had already mentioned about a lot of the federal jobs that are lost recently. Well, we're hiring them. We're putting an open invite in there. Come work for the state of Maryland, and we'll pay you what your wages that you lost. I think what the expectation is on those 2,000 jobs is that that's going to be an additional $2 billion per year annually between salaries, wages, and benefits. Who's paying for this? Then when you start hearing about, oh yeah, here's the new sleep tax, and here's the new IT tax, and here's the new this, that, and the other, it's crazy. And then some of the balances, you hear, Delegate Moon, he's on the Democrat side, he's a big proponent of increasing taxes. Every time I turn around, he's got the last one that's very, very anti-business, which is anti-consumer in Maryland, is to drop the the sales tax, a little bit of give and take. You tell me if this maths up. Uh, Take the sales tax that's currently at 6%, drop it down to 5%, but then we want to add a 5% tax to all service companies. So every HVAC, roofer, accountant, every single service that you don't currently pay a tax on, you're going to add 5%. That's going to be a lot more than that 1% drop. So to me, that's where we're at. We're doing a lot of things that are not common sense to add revenue, and it's basically death by 1,000 cuts if you're a resident of Maryland.
Right. Delegate Moon, I believe he's from Montgomery County, so it's a whole other animal in that area. But as a business owner, a lot of people don't understand. If you pay an employee, let's just say $50,000 a year, the taxes that you as a business owner also have to pay would probably come to a total of about $100,000 a year. Is that correct?
Sure.
Right. So a lot of people don't understand when these taxes go into effect, it's not just that the average person is paying more, it's also the businesses, you are still paying more, which means your prices go up. And then of course it just becomes harder and harder to stay afloat. And that's why a lot of businesses will leave, like Delegate Crosby's maybe. So it becomes a never-ending cycle where it seems like in a state like ours, where these energy costs continue to go up, it's not friendly to businesses, it's not friendly to the everyday user. People end up leaving the state until the state becomes basically non-existent because there's no tax base anymore. So if you were the governor and you had complete control, this would be my final question on this subject, but what would you do to help everyday Marylanders and businesses to actually, have a break from these exorbitant costs, and how would you grow the businesses in a sense, if you had complete control and you didn't have to worry about the General Asylum or General Assembly is what it's really called, but what would you do?
I mean, it's kind of a common sense thing. Again, God forbid you use common sense, but um, the biggest thing is to decrease spending, right? Because if we decrease spending, if we get rid of a lot of the waste, that's a big thing everybody's talking about now is government waste. I know Florida just they just kind of did their own little Doge thing and they handed back $800 million back to the federal government because they just didn't need it. So imagine what they're doing as far as the tax base. But then there's a reason why they don't have income tax in a lot of those states. So they must be doing something right. I would be looking at those kind of states and mirror it because, for one, it's the whole Laffer effect, right? You can only tax people so much before if you tax them at 100%, you're going to get zero because they're going to leave, and then you're not going to have anything to tax. So we're way past that on that spectrum. We need to look at some of those states that somehow have 0% income tax that are doing very, very well. And part of the reason they're doing well is because they're also becoming very appealing for people to come there. So Florida, for instance, Texas, they're taking a ton of people away from New York, New Jersey, California, places that are extremely high taxes. Maryland, you're going to hear a lot of people going to Florida and places like that from Maryland now. It's going to be the next one because people are getting sick of it. So we need to go back to the things that make it good to live here, which would be lower taxes. We have big cities. We need to take advantage of that. McCormick's is talking about leaving now because they're fed up. I mean, they're really the only Fortune 500 company we have in the Baltimore area, and this is not the first time that they've threatened to leave over a poor business climate. That should say a lot. That should be a wake up call. But the same thing that's happening in New Jersey, where you rely on these taxes. As soon as people retire, they move away, and then you're paying their pensions. That we need to kind of understand that. And if I was governor, I would be looking to immediately cut a lot of spending. It's not going to be good for a lot of people, but a lot of those people they're getting free rides as it is because they're not really helping anything, especially not on the taxpayers' dime. So I'd be looking to do that. I'd be looking to cut taxes on businesses instead of increase taxes. Energy's huge. I would kind of be out the door with a lot of these green energy concepts because it's 2025. You have to look at how clean cars are burning. You have to look at how clean gas is. We've made a lot of technological improvements that make everything completely different. You don't look at it as just carbon, like dirty, sooty, stuff that's just kind of blown away. I'm a big believer in self-policing and capitalism. As far as the more capitalism you have, the more competition you have, and you're naturally going to be looking to make your product better and cheaper. So if we continue to kind of use those things, like gas is clean energy as far as I'm concerned right now. When you're at mid 90%, use that because it's so much more cheaper. But that'll unlock a lot, and we just refuse to do that. We refuse to take what we have and make it better. We just want to switch everything over and then ignore the cost.
I remember as a kid in the 80s seeing people frequently throwing trash out of their car windows when we were driving. You don't see that very much now. So that is like some self policing. And when that does happen, you will hear stories from people in the community that pull that person over or say something to that person and say, "What are you doing? That's my neighborhood," or just pick that up. So I agree with you there completely. How can people find your business? And is there any social media that you like to give out about yourself?
Sure. I mean, we're obviously on Facebook. You can look up SM Mechanical. We just won in 2024. We won Baltimore Sun's Baltimore Best. For customers, we were voted on to that, so we're very proud of that. And then just recently, we won Hartford's Best, also Baltimore Sun. So again, very proud of that. So you can look us up. Our website, everything that we've. I started the business back in 2009, just working out of my house and just being a one man doing it with a helper, and we're currently at 22 employees. So, I mean, I have to pat myself on the back a little bit because everything that we're talking about, it's extremely hard to build a business nowadays. A lot of businesses are, especially post COVID, are going out of business. We're growing. We're finding new ways, new services. One of our taglines is "We treat your home like it's our own." It's something that we feel very genuine about, and it's another reason why I'm very passionate about some of the opportunities that I'm having down in Annapolis, talking to people, working with people, because again, it's this state is my state as well. I'm going to make money either no matter what. I've had some back and forth from some judges on the PSC, and I really don't care because I'm not paid to be there. And in one instance, I was told, you don't really care because you're a business owner, you're making money. And I said, look, I got news for you. I'm going to make money either way. If you tell me that I can give customers very good options, then I can sit back and kind of empathize and say, hey, let me ask you a couple questions. If I live in your house, this is what I would do. If I'm you, and based on the answers you give me, how long you're going to live here, whatever you're looking at, this is what I would do. And I can be very genuine in doing that. And all of my employees are the same way. But if you kind of narrow that down to no options because of an agenda, I'm probably going to possibly make more money because now I have to charge you a lot more money to do things that I otherwise wouldn't have to do. But I'm also a resident of the state of Maryland, so these are the things that are going to affect me on a personal level. In fact, I've got twin girls, Rowan and Tegan, and they're getting ready to turn 8 years old. I want them to be part of this business in the future, and I want to be the best that I can for them. So same thing, they're not going to be able to move this business if they wanted to. So they're going to be rooted in Maryland. I hate to say stuck in Maryland, but we kind of it's what it is. But prefer to say rooted in Maryland. Kind of take it.
Someone who has a similar background to you, running business, doing coming back to Maryland in a sense. I can respect and appreciate what you're doing because it's not just that you are involved in your personal stuff and business, it's that you're also giving back. And it just means that you are doing a civic duty and you're being a public servant by actually representing your employees, other businesses, and your community. And many people ask how they can get involved. Look, politics sucks. A lot of people who know me know I'm involved in politics. It sucks. It brings your family into things, and it ruins careers, and it's all kinds of stuff. But being a public servant and doing something like what you're doing is extremely worthwhile. We should support people like you and your employees as well, because you are actually trying to help us. So help you, yeah, help us, yeah, something like that. But anyway, Sean, I want to say thank you for coming on. I know it's your first time ever doing a podcast, and it's Sean Maloney. Took me a second to get that, but mine's Fazenbaker, so I get that all the time. So, Sean, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you out in the community. And anytime something's going on with energy, we will be talking to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hope to see you again.
Yeah.
This is APN's very own White House correspondent Alexandra Levine. Hello, everyone. This is Alexandra Levine with Alexandra Levine Live on the America's Pulse Network. You are all in with Alexandra Levine. We are still waiting for someone from the White House to come out and tell us what transpired between President Trump and Vladimir Putin on that call today. We are here live at the White House. We're waiting for White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to come out and tell us about the updates of today, the call between President Trump and Vladimir Putin, what transpired in that call.
Subscribe and follow America's Pulse Network on the above social medias.
Live. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Alexandra Levine Live with the America's Pulse Network. You are all in with me, Alexandra Levine. That is right. I am the White House correspondent for this network. As I said earlier tonight, it is an honor and a privilege to be part of the new conservative media at the White House with Caroline Leavitt, as well as others that I encounter at the White House. Turning into segment 4, talk about Trump's 100 days. The first story, which of course is why we have conservative media in the White House, has to do with President Trump being at a UFC fight on Saturday night. Now, UFC is run and owned by Dana White, who's a personal friend of President Trump's. President Trump does go down to UFC a lot. He had Elon Musk down there with his son X. He had J.D. Vance there. He had RFK Jr. there with his wife, Cheryl Hines. Or there's a video where it shows President Trump shaking and bringing RFK Jr. close to him and, giving him, a pat on the shoulder. And then it shows that President Trump is going in the direction to the next person, which is Cheryl Hines. But then he gets distracted by Joe Rogan, who we know Joe Rogan is a good friend of his. Joe Rogan actually endorsed President Trump at the very end. And Cheryl Hines, she goes to shake the president's hand and she notices that he's going over to Joe Rogan and she's like, oh, okay, like he's going with Joe Rogan. But what does the fake news media do instead? The headline from the Daily Mail UK says, President Trump snubbed RFK Jr.'s wife, Cheryl Hines. And then all these conspiracy theories come out. Well, the reason that President Trump snubbed Cheryl Hines is because Cheryl Hines is a big liberal actress. She never liked President Trump. So he probably has some beef against her and all this stuff. No, that's not true at all. Again, President Trump went up to RFK Jr. He was about to shake and go to Cheryl Hines, but Joe Rogan kind of distracted him from the side and said like, hey, President Trump, hey. And then President Trump went to Joe Rogan. Now, what the mainstream media won't show you, and of course, what they show you afterwards is the first slide that I'm going to show you right now. So it shows, and it shows clearly that President Trump went back to shake hands with Cheryl Hines, it's RFK Jr.'s wife, because he didn't see her hand. Quote, you're always trying to make something out of nothing. That's right. The fake news media, CNN, ABC, the mainstream media, always try to make something out of nothing. Again, President Trump is a gentleman. He's not stupid. He knows that RFK Jr.'s wife was there, and he went back afterwards and hugged her and shook her hand, and there's no beef between them. They're perfectly fine. Cheryl Hines loves the fact that President Trump kept his promise. He nominated, or excuse me, I should say, he appointed RFK Jr. as the HHS secretary. He knew that RFK Jr. would get in. He was nominated through. The Senate confirmed him. He's the new HHS secretary. And President Trump is working with RFK Jr. to clean up our food, to clean up HHS, and also in regards to the COVID vaccines and other vaccines going forward, which vaccine is good for you, which vaccine is bad for you, which vaccine shouldn't be going to children, and so forth. So Cheryl Hines has nothing to be mad about when it comes to President Trump. He did everything he was going to say for her husband. And let me tell you, when he was sworn in as the new HHS secretary, she was elated. She went right over to him. She says, thank you, President Trump. He embraced her. She embraced him. And there's no beef between them. So again, the mainstream media is lying again. Fake news media. Again, we are not fake news. But the mainstream media, which is the real fake news, they want to put up the headlines that President Trump snubbed RFK Jr.'s wife. And RFK Jr., he didn't think that the president snubbed her at all. He was laughing through the whole thing because he knew that the president was getting distracted by all these different people, wanting to shake his hand. President Trump, he shook the hand of Shaq. He shook the hand of Dave Portnoy. Dave Portnoy, who owns Barstool Sports, said, thank you, President Trump, for filling the legislation with making sure we have enough water to go to the bathroom and to shower. I mean, there was a big plethora of people, and every single person that won a UFC fight actually came up to President Trump, shook his hand, actually gave them President Trump their winning belt. Because after you win a UFC fight or a boxing match, you get a belt. So all these champions are giving President Trump their belts. That's how much love there is in that arena for President Trump. That's why he continues to go to these UFC fights. And you see that there is so much love in the room. And certain people wouldn't be there if they didn't love President Trump. They didn't have respect for him. So I'm going to put up this second meme, or it's a very popular meme. President Trump had this meme out years ago, and it's a picture of President Trump and his tie gets out of the way. And we'll put up that slide. There you go. President Trump is the baddest mofo on the planet. Even his tie gets out of his way. I love it. I love that meme. That's such a great meme. And it's so true, is that President Trump is the baddest person on the planet. And that's not in a negative way. It's saying that he's just so strong and he's just so good. And it's so great that we have such a strong president back in the White House. And he was strong in 2017, but as I said in my earlier segment, he's stronger now than ever. And fake news media continues to mess with him. Nobody listens to the fake news anymore. Nobody listens to mainstream media anymore. They listen to podcasters like myself and real media, real journalists, and people that will report on President Trump fairly. And everyone's like, oh, you can't criticize the president, you can't criticize the president. But again, criticize them on what? What the mainstream media does is they turn things, they twist things. They say that he said this. They do what they call selective editing. That's what they did with the UFC fight thing. That's why they said, oh, President Trump snubbed Cheryl Hines, because they did what they call selective editing. They didn't show the whole video of President Trump coming back around to hug Cheryl Hines and to embrace her and to shake her hand. That's why the mainstream media and fake news is so dangerous. That's why President Trump has said that the mainstream media and the fake news are the enemy of the people, are detriments to our nation. And he even said CNN hates America. They do hate America if they support illegal terrorists and illegal criminals. I agree with that statement. I agree. Again, that's why I'm so happy to be part of the White House, be a part of the White House briefing room, to be able to report to you fair and balanced news right in real time. I make sure that I wait till the news line goes up, breaking news. I read the facts first. I do the research before I report. That is a proper journalist. That is a proper reporter. We do not just report on opinions, report on assumptions. Now on my podcast, I have personal opinions on things, but when I'm reporting on certain mainstream media stories, I make sure that it's heavily researched and that I get all the facts straight before I come on live. And that's why the president respects conservative media. That's why he respects people like myself, because we're not out to get him. He doesn't like the fake news because they are always out to get him. The New York Times, CNN, ABC, NBC, even some people on Fox News are out to get him. It's not right and it's not fair. That's why President Trump said to Caitlin Collins, why can't you just say, thank you, President Trump, for getting this illegal out of our country? Thank you. Thank you for saving innocent American lives. But she couldn't even do that. All she said was to the El Salvadorian president, can you bring back the illegal criminal back to America? Are you going to bring him back? Stupid question. I would never ask the president that question. That's a dumb question. Dumb. Why didn't Caitlin Collins ask about something relevant? Something that made sense. Her question was so out of left field. It didn't even make sense in the conversation. She was trying to be relevant with what she asked, but the guy's in prison in El Salvador. He's there. Peace. Leave him there. Bring him back. The fact that these crazy Democrat senators want to bring him back is even more asinine, and that's dangerous, and these people should be voted out, or they should be removed from Congress, as far as I'm concerned. Anybody that puts an illegal immigrant over a legal citizen of this country has to have their head examined. This is what President Trump campaigned on. That's why we, the people, voted him in. And remember, 87% of the people in this country 87% of the people in this country support President Trump's illegal immigration policy. 87% of the people in this country do not support illegal criminals in this country. That is a fact. That is a fact. Turning on to breaking news tonight. Someone that worked for Pete Hegseth, who's our Secretary of Defense, turned out to be a leaker. He leaked information that he wasn't supposed to leak. He was also on the Signal chat with J.D. Vance and Alex Wong and the NSC director, Michael Waltz, and so forth. But it turned out today that this guy who worked for Pete Hegseth was a known leaker. He was a young guy. They found out, they immediately removed him from the department, and guess what? He had to wait for his mommy to pick him up. The Pentagon is not going to mess around with leakers. That's why President Trump put Pete Hegseth in there, to get rid of leakers, to get rid of never-Trumpers, rhinos, snowflakers, the woke culture of the military. And Pete Hegseth has now put his chief of staff on leave, because it is the job of the chief of staff to heavily vet who is going to be working for the head of the cabinet. Just like the chief of staff is in charge of hiring who works for congressmen, who works for senators. When a chief of staff does not heavily vet the people that are going to be working under your boss, that's a problem. What the guy that worked for Pete Hegseth did, the leaker, what he did was treasonous. And he will be held accountable for leaking important information that he was not supposed to leak. But that is breaking news. As I said, President Trump and his team do not mind firing people. They will fire anybody that does not have President Trump's best interest at heart. President Trump has already fired certain people that work for the NSC. I know for a fact that Laura Loomer has the president's ear in regards to who he should keep close to him and not. Laura Loomer has expressed that she wants to be a part of President Trump's vetting team so that she can vet these people before the NSC hires them, the DOD, etc. And she has done investigative journalism. She's gone deep. And she's brought receipts to show the president and others, the country and the world, who these people are that President Trump has around him and who should be gone and who should still be there. Now, there's some people that Laura Loomer went after that a lot of people do not agree with. Like, she went after Elon Musk. She went after a couple prominent people that President Trump works with. She has gone after Attorney General Pam Bondi because she's waiting for the Epstein files to be released. She's waiting for a lot of things. But I know for a fact she's dug into Attorney General Pam Bondi's legislative past in Florida. She's called that out. She's pushed that out. And her and others, they're looking for justification. They're looking for arrests. A lot of people are saying, where are the arrests already? Why haven't you arrested Adam Schiff? Why haven't you arrested this person? Why haven't you arrested that person? Why haven't you arrested this person who spied on your campaign? What's going on here? Again, it is a process. And like I've said to my audience, you got to trust the process here. I know people don't like that expression, but it's a true expression. They just got in there. They just got in there in February. Maybe even later. Some people weren't even appointed till March. Or confirmed, I should say. They weren't confirmed and sworn until March. So Pam Bondi hasn't been there that long. Kash Patel has not been there that long. And Elon Musk is doing a phenomenal job at Doge. Nobody wants to get rid of him. He's working for himself. He doesn't get paid. Doesn't want to get paid. He's doing it for we the people. But again, it's about full transparency. And when you leak classified information, when you leak important information that was said to you by the Pentagon that you're not supposed to repeat to the country and the world, you should be held accountable. And that's why that leaker, thank God, was found, and found early, before any hardcore classified information could go to our enemies. Because you don't want our enemies to know what we're thinking and feeling. And people were, of course, the fake news media, they were freaking out about Signalgate. And of course, CIA Director Radcliffe and others said there was no classified information mentioned on that Signal call. The Yemenis, or excuse me, the Houthis had no idea what we were going to be doing. It was just a thought. Actually, J.D. Vance commented on how horrible China is, which we all know is the truth. But Pete Hegseth never revealed on that signal call what our strategy was going to be, what was going to happen. Didn't release any classified information. He might have talked about military strategy scenarios, but at the end of the day, the Americans went in there. They bombed the Houthis in Yemen without them seeing it coming. Again, we have to be very careful, very, very, very careful. Who President Trump has close to him, who Pete Hegseth has close to him, and others. We have to make sure that we have the right people that are working in the White House and outside of the White House. But I'm very happy that the DOD, that Pete Hegseth, he caught the leaker immediately, that he's holding his chief of staff accountable for not vetting this person properly. And that maybe there'll be a new team. A new team that will do the job correctly. Because we cannot have classified information being leaked. Not at all. But again, going back to President Trump, he's a master negotiator. He's a badass. He's someone that's taking our country back to what it should always have been. He's making it better, more prosperous for we the people. His presidential address was beautiful. A lot of people cried when he honored certain people that day. What he's done for all these victims' families, brought hostages back that were detained in Gaza. How he created the Lincoln-Riley Act, signed it into law. How he made a young boy with cancer, brain cancer, a Secret Service agent. Job of a lifetime. How he honored a woman who lost her husband, who was a police officer, to an illegal. And many, many more stories. Again, we never see that in the Democrat Party. We see the Democrat Party supporting illegal criminals, MS-13 gang members. That's what's going on today. So my question to the Democrat Party is, how do you intend on surviving? How do you intend on gaining back power when you're supporting illegal criminals, MS-13 gang members? How is this a smart strategy? And then you have rallies going around called Total Oligarchy. Bernie Sanders and AOC, I guess they're planning on running for president and vice president. Are they the faces of the Democrat Party? Bunch of socialist, communist, Marxist elitists? The Squad is the head of the Democrat Party? That's AOC. She's a part of it. If you're a Democrat, I guess that's what you have to look forward to. Why would anybody want to be a part of a party like that? That's why a lot of moderate Democrats are hashtag exiting the Democrat Party and becoming Republican, because they've hashtag had enough. We see a lot of Democrats becoming independents. They've hashtag had enough. And the more that the Democrat Party continues to push this narrative of supporting illegal criminals, it's not going to help them in the end. They're going to continue to lose. Again, how can we give our country back to Democrats? How can we? Our country will be horrible if that happens again. That's why we need to keep people with the best interests in our government. We need to keep people that love our country in our government. That's why so many people want President Trump to run for a third term or have his children lead our country, our nation, because they trust him. They trust them. They don't trust people that have been working in government for years. They don't trust people that are limelighters. They don't trust people that are just in it for themselves. They trust people that actually care about we the people. They trust people that love our country, that want to do for our country. That's what's important. That's what we all need to think about in this next election cycle. I know there's some people that are running for re-election in 2 years. There's gubernatorial races that are up. There's delegation races that are up. You need to think about, who do I want in power? Do I want the same old, or do I want someone who actually cares about our country? That's what's important at the end of the day. And as a way to celebrate President Trump's achievements, remember last week I had Alicia McMillan, who is the creator of the First 100 Party. And I recommend everybody, and we'll put up the link to go to first100party.com. There you go. America is back. It's April 29th, 2025. It starts at 6 p.m. at the Kennedy Center. There's different tiers. If you go to first100party.com, you can click on that link and you can see the tiers. And I think it ranges from, I want to say, $175 all the way up. You can sponsor, you can request to be media, you can request to be a special guest, you can request to be a speaker, but it's going to be an amazing event. And my favorite place, the Kennedy Center, that I've sung at years ago, that my goal and my hope is to sing at the Kennedy Center again, more full time. As you know, I am a professional opera singer. The Kennedy Center is something that I have loved my whole life. I used to go to the Kennedy Center with my grandmother and my grandparents for years. But this is a place where President Trump is now the new chairman of the Kennedy Center. My friend Rick Grinnell is the new executive director of the Kennedy Center. And I'm so happy that Alicia picked this place to have this event. Again, we're celebrating the first 100 days of President Trump. You go to first100party.com. That's first100party.com. Go to this event. It's April 29th, the Kennedy Center at 6 p.m. And it's, as Alicia said last week, it's a celebration of President Trump. It's nothing negative. It's a very positive event. And she encourages everybody to come and everybody to celebrate. And we'll be right back after the break with some final thoughts.
Mainstream media is bought and paid for. The truth is twisted to fit their agenda. But America is waking up, because podcasts are the future for trusted media. Welcome to the America's Pulse Network. It is a network built by patriots that upholds the Constitution. The America's Pulse Network stands for God, truth, and the America First movement. There is no corporate propaganda, no government spin, just real news, real talk, and real voices fighting for faith, freedom, and the future of this great nation with common sense. Here are some of America's Pulse Network podcasts. Alexandra Levine Live, hosted by Alexandra Levine. Jersey Shore Podcast, hosted by Damon Galdo. The Conservative Corner, hosted by Seth Eisenberg. APN's The Pulse, hosted by Alexandra, Damon, and Seth. So tune into America's Pulse Network on the following social media platforms: X/Twitter, Rumble, Truth Social, Facebook, and YouTube. Join the revolution. Because the pulse of America beats for God and country. America's Pulse Network is for faith, family, freedom, and truth.
And hello, everyone. It's Alexandra Levine live with the America's Pulse Network. I just want to say, don't forget about our friend Seth Eisenberg, the Conservative Corner. It's on Sundays at 7 p.m. He will be coming back on our network. But as you know, unfortunately, our friend Seth, he ended up in the hospital for close to 35 days. He had a very bad infection in his foot. He had to get 5 surgeries on his foot. He almost lost his foot. And our good friend Fred Profiter, who runs the Frederick County Conservative Club, put together this GoFundMe for our Conservative Corner host, Seth Eisenberg. So please go to his GoFundMe. It's gofundme.com/f/help Jonah-Eisenberg-overcome-health.crisis. If you go to gofundme.com and just put in Jonah Eisenberg, it'll come right up. He is currently raised, and we'll put it up, $5,426. The goal, there we go, $5,426. The goal is $25,000, but that's not the final goal. That's just this one goal. So every $25,000 that we raise for this man will eventually add up to $100,000. That is the final goal. This man is a good, hardworking man. He is a veteran. He served our Navy, and unfortunately, he hasn't been able to work because of his foot. He has a 14-year-old son that he raises and supports. He also has a mortgage to pay, and he has expenses. And because he hasn't been able to work, he hasn't been able to pay off some of those expenses. So this money goes to helping Seth, helping his family. People miss him so much, and we can't wait for him to be back with us and to start the Conservative Corner with us. Sundays at 7, he will be on our show, The Pulse. He'll be a regular host with us on The Pulse, which will be Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. And we are praying for Seth, and we're praying that he has a speedy recovery. But please, everyone, go to his GoFundMe page. It's going to be, just click gofundme.com. Just click help Jonah Eisenberg overcome health crisis, and you can donate. I'll be honest with you, the average donation is between $100 to $150. And that's why he's got so many donations in such a short period of time. Even if you can donate $5, $10, $15, it all adds up. But the more, obviously, you give, the better it is for us to reach our goal. And also the better it will be for Seth in the long run. So whatever you guys can give, we appreciate it. Again, please go to gofundme.com and type in Health Jonah Eisenberg Overcome Health Crisis. And I just want to say this has been a wonderful, wonderful 2-hour show. Again, we had a special segment on tonight with our own Tim Fazenbaker with Faze Time. And we want you to check that out. And also check us out at the America's Pulse Network on Rumble, at America's Pulse Network on YouTube. We will be on Facebook at the end of this month at America's Pulse Network. And also don't forget to check out our other show, The Jersey Shore with Damon Galdo, on Monday nights from 8 to 10 p.m., as well as Friday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Don't forget to follow The Jersey Shore. And of course, don't forget to follow me, Alexandra Levine, on Facebook, at Alexandra LEVI20 on X, at AR Levine 85 on Rumble, at Levine Consulting on YouTube, at AR Levine 85 on Truth Social, and at AR Levine 85 on Instagram. Thanks so much, everyone. Again, have a wonderful rest of the Passover. Have a wonderful Easter coming up. We'll see you Thursday night. And the reason you listen and the reason you watch is you are no idiot.